Hello, and welcome to Wright Virtual Visits. I'm Anna Kaplan, Executive Director of Great Cliff, and I'm coming to you live from Western New York. Today, I'll be your host as we travel virtually to Taliesin in Spring Green, Wisconsin. And this is a very special episode today, as we will be among the very first to get a peek into the restoration of the Hillside Theater. Let me start by thanking my colleague in the 2023 edition of this program, Eric Rogers of the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy. As always, though we don't see him here on screen, Eric is working hard behind the scenes to ensure that everything runs smoothly. He's also monitoring Facebook and will be attentive to your questions. So please add any questions. Comments are also welcome. Right on the Facebook thread, and we'll be sure to catch those during the tour and then incorporate them into the Q&A portion of today's program. A huge thank you to Forever Ready Productions. Today we have Lauren facilitating our show. We are very grateful for the continued support of Forever Ready, without which we would not have such a polished program for you today. Let's pause now briefly to play a short video about their production firm and the services they offer.
You know that feeling you get when something inspires you? You know that feeling you get when something inspires you?
The kind of feeling that inspires you to act?
That's where we come in.
We tell mission-focused stories tailored to your goals.
Our collaborative, efficient, and service-oriented creativity simplifies all your video needs. Relationships, not clients.
Stories, not content.
Forever Ready Productions.
Thanks again to Lauren, Scott, Allison, and the whole Forever Ready team. So we've featured Taliesin on our program before, but today we are focusing on a piece of the vast property that we have yet to visit. Ryan Hewson, Preservation Director at Taliesin, is over at the Hillside Theater now with Elizabeth Mask behind the camera. I'm grateful to have them both joining us on Wright Virtual Visits today. I'll now pass it over to them and then meet you back here for a Q&A after the tour of the theater.
Hello and welcome to today's Wright Virtual Visit. We are at the Hillside Theater located at Taliesin in Spring Green, Wisconsin. My name is Ryan Hewson and I'm the Director of Preservation. We're going to give you a little tour of the theater and what we've been working on here the last 3 years. So if you'll come with me, we're going to walk in the door here. For those of you who are familiar or have been here before, the final touch will be putting the Louis Sullivan door handles back on here as the cherry on top. So now we'll head inside and I'll tell you a fun little fact about the doors. And so these doors were completely reconstructed by our crew. I should mention that our crew had done vast majority of the work in here, aside from the plumbing, electrical, and HVAC work. And so we were able to find these pivot hinges here. We were able to actually find the same company and the same exact brand. So down here, these are the original vaults, and then we were able to add new guts in. So that was sort of a fun for us, because that's odd that you can find that over 50 years later. In the theater foyer here, a lot of the work here focused on refreshing the finishes. So that had to do with cleaning these strips here, cleaning all the windows and refitting them, and then refinishing all the windows as well in here. And so we're going to come into the main space here, of course. Another big piece of this project, which we'll see parts of along the way, and Elizabeth and I, who is behind the camera, are feeling the benefits of, is the addition of an HVAC system here. And one of those vents is actually up here, and maybe you can zoom in there. And so that's hidden behind that grill there. It was actually a historic grill of interest. That grill is actually built out of floorboards. So it's just another example of Taliesin where everything was used. And so that will provide heat and cooling into the space, helping to not only climatize the space, but also make it more comfortable for our guests and performers. So that's been a big addition for us, and it's also helped us raise some other monies by having this added. So I should just step back and say this project is funded partially through a National Park Service Save America's Treasures grant, and then also by a National Trust for Historic Preservation from the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Trust. And then we were also able to leverage several other grant opportunities for the curtain that is currently in storage, and the few of the Asian artifacts that are in the building. And in fact, we have a really great opportunity to take a look at those artifacts here. Two that were conserved through a Carpenter Foundation grant. And we're really appreciative of all our grantors and our donors. They really help us make this happen. And so these are two statues. They were Wright originally had three of these. One was completely lost in the fire here at Hillside in 1952, and then these two survived but did go through the fire. So these were conserved by a group up in Milwaukee, and what their task was really to lightly clean these, and then also start to solidify any areas of loss, so anything that's flaking, things like that. And we obviously, because being through that fire and these other things that had happened is part of their life here at Taliesin, so the goal was not to bring them all the way back to their original state, but to stabilize them and bring them and clean them and bring them up to show what they are. And the two pieces are, this is a Buddha here, and this is a multi-armed Guanyin, are the two characters we see here. They're carved wood with paper and lacquer is the finish that you're seeing on those. And so those will go on either side of the theater. When we go into the theater, you'll see why they're not in place yet. So that's one thing that will be coming. And then as we continue along through in here, you'll see over here is the bar area here, and that has also been refinished and has gotten replumbed as well. So we look forward to being able to serve people there and enjoy this foyer space, because obviously you can see the foyer has an outdoor component to it with these French door windows that we're so familiar with, and you will see we were able to add some exit lighting, emergency lighting, those types of things. So that'd be really nice. And another part is that actually when the fellowship would do formals, originally the formals were here. This was where they were set up. And a little later on, we'll show you a little secret panel that makes that happen, and how you would get the food through, and how we got some tool stuff through. So it ended up being really helpful. So glad they had that. Well, now I think you can follow me into the theater space. What we're going to see is there's a large scaffolding set up to go to the very highest ceiling, where we're again doing the same thing as we did in the foyer, cleaning and touching up, refreshing that space up there. So that's what this giant scaffolding is all in service of here. Actually, over in that area was the Wright's kind of the box seat, the private box seats there. And so as we continue to come into the space here, you can kind of get a sense of the stage, and we're gonna later go down into the basement and see that space, because we were able to build out green rooms and bathrooms there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And as you're looking through the forest of scaffolding, you can sort of see into the dining room as well. And so that's sort of how this building flows and connects to each other. And I will step back just for a second while we're here. It takes a little bit longer than this to explain it, but this theater has an interesting history. It's probably more appropriate to think of it as it's been three theaters in a way. When it was first built, it was built for his aunts, Jane and Nell. And at that time, it was a theater, a stage, and kind of a multi-purpose, right? Multi-purpose gymnasium. And then up top here, kind of where, actually sort of where our scaffolding is now, there was a running track that hung down. And you can imagine the room is about the same space, so that's, I don't know, about 300 laps for a mile or something, I think. And so that was the original configuration of this. Then Wright, when Wright gets this in the 30s, they, after that, they do some work and they take that running track I'm talking about and they kind of deconstruct it and turn it into theater boxes. And these get wooden benches, and so this becomes more of a proper theater at that point. And then finally in 1952, there was a terrible brush fire that burned basically from the dining room all the way to the foyer. So basically right about here. And then that's what gave rise to the theater we're looking at now. One of the things that we were able to add, obviously, we're concerned with being able to make this space as accessible to as many people as possible. And so we were able to put a door here to make this an accessible restroom. So it'll be an accessible restroom, and there'll be accessible seating here. And then outside, we didn't show you, but there's an accessible path as well. So we have to, in terms of historic preservation and these buildings, there's a lot we have to negotiate. So we try to do as the best that we can without destroying the character of the building, which is always a juggling act, right? And requires a lot of conversations and working through things. We can't always solve it. We can't always solve the problem through a building solution. Sometimes it's a different solution. And one of those solutions, which you won't see right now, but was another donation, was to provide streaming service for here in the theater. And so that'll take what is basically a 100-seat theater and turn it into an infinite-seat theater so that we can share that more broadly. So that's another example of how we can make this more accessible. And then I did promise I'd show you this. So so this gorgeous window wall that looks out this way, and then this panel right here, you see these panels, these are all fixed except for this one. And so this one is the way that the kitchen's that way. So this is where the food would come through for the formals, and I was talking about that. And we were also, as you can imagine, during the construction project, that was very helpful to get some cords and tools through and things like that. So it was a useful little trick. And that will remain here, and maybe we'll need to use it again. So now we've made our way through the scaffolding, and we're going to head down here to the stage here. And here we are on the stage. The stage we did need to reconstruct, so we had to take that all up. We were able to save about 80% of the floorboards here. You'll notice that the floorboards as well, they run the same direction as the curtain track does. And so this is red oak flooring, so luckily it's pretty standard. Right over here, you'll see that this is the piano niche, and this is where you would store your grand piano, of course. In this case, it's a Steinway Concert D, the biggest one they make. And that was from 1925. That Steinway is currently in storage while we're doing all this work, because that's really hard to move around, and we didn't want it around while we're doing all this work. And so that's what that empty space is there. And then this is our side theater door here. There's a few more pieces that need to go back, but that all got reconstructed as well. And so underneath this flooring, we now have a new concrete floor, new studs, and then our new floor joists. And then you're also able to install new electrical and other routings underneath the stage, which was really helpful because that's one of our few spaces. Because as you can see, the space is fairly wide open, so there aren't a lot of options for adding ductwork and things like that that aren't visible. So under the stage was a really great way for us to do that. The HVAC comes from back here and it's flowing onto the stage, and then we can't see it from here, but up there are more vents that are on top that will go down onto the audience here. So that's where that's coming from. And then and then all these finishes also receive repairs and touch up. Up here, there would not actually be plexiglass like there is in the openings. That's just trying to keep the dust at bay as best we can. Once this is done, that'll be taken out, and those will be wide open openings. Basically, kind of like windowless windows. And so you can imagine that makes the sound travel through. So then we walk through here, you'll see the break line in this is where the new flooring is right here. This less finished is the newer flooring. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to head down into the basement area that's underneath the dining room. And this area we were able to add a storage room, 2 green rooms, which are for performers or musicians, sort of where they can lay their instruments or where they can take a break, that type of stuff. And then finally a bathroom. So if you want to follow me in here, we'll get a really nice look. I think first, before I clog up the view, you get a really nice look down the hallway, and you can see the work there. So this is a completely new. This is a rehabilitation. This is a build out here. The columns, stone columns, are original. Those were put in about 1940. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get inside, and then the rest are things that we have added. And we'll talk about a few little fun facts when we get in there. So this first room here, this is a storage room, and this was really the only historic floor that was down here, the stone floor. So this floor here, what we did was we drilled out all the grout and took it up and put it at that time on the stage in exactly the way it came out. And then when we were done with all the concrete, we put this floor back together. So this was the one piece that remained. There were no other. There were other pieces of concrete here, but they were more to support shoring or things like that, temporary structure. And some of the reason for that is that this was originally a 2-story space, and up until about 1940, there was a beam line here that then had regular posts. And then in about 1940, Wright decides to put these columns in, and they eliminate, and the majority of this post system was eliminated. And so now we've set up a problem, right? Because before the support was here, so that works, but now it's here. So now we've got a problem, and that set up decades of shoring and different temporary measures and things like that. And one of the so it probably took our team who has done a lot of this work, 2 gentlemen, Kevin and Kirk, and hats off to them and all the work that they've done. It took them about a month to sleuth all that out because things were, you release one thing and something else goes up, and because all these different shoring things had all been done at different times, so they were competing with each other. And so we were able to do that. And so as part of this work that you now can't see, but you'll see in some of the slides, is that behind this wall here, there's actually a 2-foot cavity. And that cavity has all the HVAC ducts and all those runs. And then further behind that, there's a regular 2x6 wood wall that goes down to a foundation, and then has LVLs, which are laminated veneer lumber and engineered beam that goes over to another framed wall behind here. And so that's taking that's taking up the structure. We were able to leave a lot of the old beams in there, but that's taking up the structure. So we were able to, so now the dining room floor is much tighter. However, it's a terrible place for your marble collection because it has a lot of roll. And that just speaks to the way, because of the vast size of this property, It's about 80,000 square feet of building in total and 800 acres. We have to operate in terms of lines in the sand. So in this case, one of the lines in the sand is we're basically going to the top of the joists here, and then we know that we'll have to come. Then we know later we'll have to come from the top down to fix the floor, because that was alternately shimmed and stuff for the outer level conditions, and that will be best done from the top down. So we sort of have to plan ahead to make sure we don't get too far ahead or get ourselves painted in the corner, which is totally possible. So that's one way we have to think of these spaces. Also in the storage room, you'll see the brains of the HVAC system. That's a VRF system, which stands for variable refrigerant flow. And so essentially it's refrigerant. It does the heat and cool. That allows for smaller line sets. And as you can hear, a lot lower fan speeds. The fan doesn't have to push as hard. So that was some of the reasons that we selected that. It was better for a theater environment where we needed to be quieter. And then each one of these rooms here has its own mini split in it that does the heating and cooling. So if we walk in here, we'll see that there. And this is a vent here, and then this is damper. This is a damper control here that controls the vents that go up into the dining room. Because we were able to reconnect those as well. So that's what you're seeing here in terms of these pieces. And then now we're here in the room, and I'll talk about a few things here. So as we were building out these rooms, one thing that's kind of neat to point out is this trim that you see here. That's actually milled from an oak tree that had died here, and we had milled up, and so it gets to continue its life here at Taliesin. The other thing that we decided here is this just has straight paint finish, no sand finish, no attempt to make it look like plaster. What we're trying to do is those with a keen eye will see that this is very definitely added into this space, that this is not, we're not trying to look like Frank Lloyd Wright or suppose what he would do here, but we did pick up on the colors and some of the different things in the building. Because we do feel it's important there is a harmony to Taliesin and a unity, and so that's the way we're trying to pull that through. So basically, and so in that way, these are all stick framed out, and it was really great that we were able to showcase these stone piers, because a lot of other things had to get hidden to make this a more practical space for us. Which is also not on the tour path, and it has a little bit lower zoning, so it has a little more ability. It can adapt to change easier here. We've identified that, whereas the space up above the dining room is a very historic space, and doing that structural work down here allows us to not have to do that up there, and and be able to treat that differently than we would here. So that's sort of a little window into how we make those decisions. There's a lot of different discussions that need to be had, but we sort of have an idea of where things can happen and where they can't. We have this would be the washroom here, where there'll be a sink and people could change. And then as we come out this way here, we're going to hit another line in the sand. So this door over here, this actually goes to the tunnel that connects to the drafting studio. So that's how supplies and things like that get routed, and that's been here for quite some time. I'm not exactly sure when that started, but it's certainly been here a long time. And so that's something we'll need to work on in the future. And then as we're coming out here, we'll see that we are now, again, if you're familiar, we are now underneath the assembly hall here. Right here, basically, we're looking at this. This is kind of the line in the sand on this project here, because there's a beam line here that needs work, but that goes up 3 stories, and probably by the time we cross this line here, you're looking at a multi-million-dollar project this way. So again, now that we've come down into the basement, which is probably very seldom seen, but always enjoyable, we're going to go back out to the theater. This is also, as we're coming out here, an example of the plaster work out here. So we have a few spaces like this too that sort of show some of the original where we can show that and where we can have that. So there's a lot of places where even if something's gone over it, there's still original material that's behind it. So I think this will have a tremendous impact because prior to this work, we really could only invite our friends to perform here because of the water that was coming in, and the state of the basement was literally a basement. So we couldn't, luckily we had very talented friends, so that was all right. But I think that our ability to reach out to other acts and have different people come and perform or give lectures or talk about our preservation work here or our programming, that will be a huge improvement. And then I think also for the community and not the local community and also the larger community, it'll be really nice to have a space that people can experience what I like to call architecture working, right? I'd like to think that this is really enjoyable, and that listening to me talk about how the theater works is great, but I'm going to bet that you're going to enjoy seeing a performance in here more than you are listening to me talk about it. I think it's a way to showcase Taliesin. So we'll have
Lauren, can you get Ryan and hi so much. That was really excellent. And I know that our viewers and I personally really appreciated how you incorporated, the historic footage and photos, and just that was just such a treat to be in that space. So I definitely have several questions for you, and I wanted to start off with a two-part question. First, Ryan, you mentioned that the property is 800 acres. That's large property. Can you explain where exactly the theater is on the property, and then also how it fits into Wright's conception for Taliesin as a whole?
Yes, and I'm happy to do that. And just to put a finer point, sorry, as preservationists would have to do this, we have 800 acres in total, and 600 is actually comprises the historic core. That other 200 acres is was his Uncle Thomas's farm, not the uncle that he talks of in the autobiography, but was the family carpenter, and that's where we do our preservation activities from. Mm-hmm. And so Hillside actually was originally built, this building was originally built for his aunts in 1902-03 in service of the Hillside Home School, which was a co-educational boarding school that they ran together until about 1915 or about 1915 or so. And and Wright acquired the building in somewhere in about the 1930s there, and it had pledged to the aunt for $1 and had pledged to the aunts that he would keep it for educational purposes. And so that educational purpose that evolved through the help of Ogavana and others was the Taliesin Fellowship. And so that's when some of those renovations were made to make that second theater that I was talking about. There was more of a theater. And for those familiar with the site, there's actually, and now hang on, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are actually 7 total buildings on the historic core, 5 of which are directly attributable to Wright. 2 other little ones have influence from and were worked on during his lifetime, of course, but we're not sure how much hand he had in the design. And so if you're familiar with Taliesin, the residence, just to make things a little bit confusing, Taliesin refers to the whole property, as well as Taliesin, the residence that shines off the brow here in Wisconsin. Hillside is about a mile away, actually, about a mile to the south. And so actually quite a big spread. And so it's another large building on this property. I hope that helps untangle a little bit. And I think, more to explore for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And what types of performances did the building host in the past?
And many there. I mean, thanks to Elizabeth's clever editing, we got to see a couple of them, right? Obviously, music, very important to Wright. So various musical performances from an individual to quartets to, fuller orchestras and choirs, even a Taliesin choir. And then also there would be plays and things like that as well, smaller plays, not exactly. We have a great American Players Theater that is down the road, so not exactly on that level, but certainly plays. And then the other thing that was shown there were movies, right? Love movies. And we actually do have, and please don't ask me the name of them, I won't remember, but we actually do have a listing of all the movies that were shown at the Playhouse and here at Hillside Theater. And at one point, the public could come for 5 cents and get a cup of coffee and see a movie. Not sure we can hit that price point now, but we'll see what comes in the future.
Wow. And when will do you expect the project will be done?
We expect that the project should be wrapped up in about March of 2024. We just got a few more of the finishing stuff and how that has to layer together, and then grand opening of the theater on June 8th. As some may know, that's someone's birthday. And so there'll be a lot more information to come on that. And I believe, Elizabeth, there's probably you can subscribe to a newsletter to learn more about that.
Yeah, so to stay updated on the latest programming and reopening details for the theater, we highly recommend signing up for our electronic newsletter. Perfect. You can hit with the QR code here. This way you'll be among the first to know about any programming updates or special events happening in the theater. In the meantime, you can still see Taliesin the house. We are offering tours of Taliesin on weekends through the first week of December. You can find tickets at taliesinpreservation.org.
So Elizabeth, who will have the honor to be the first to perform on the stage?
I think you guys will have to wait and see.
I love that answer. Okay, well, we'll all be anxiously waiting that news, and we'll be sure to sign up for the newsletter. Let's circle back to the restoration briefly. So, Ryan, what you were showing us, I'm assuming that the entire building had to be retrofitted with AC and electric to allow for modern day efficiency. And that's what the major changes were. Is that correct? We had a question about that and I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, certainly. Yes, we did. We had to do some upgrading for the HVAC, especially. And in regards to that, we actually, which is lesser exciting, but probably more exciting for our insurance company, we did have to upgrade our power service up to 3-phase. So that also, we were able to update the electrical service. So that'll help us with future projects in the building. And then also, while the one piece that we did maintain, because it goes through the whole building, is that it's a low voltage lighting system, and that was maintained as that goes through the whole. And I won't bore everybody with the details, but that was one thing that was maintained throughout.
Okay, great. Well, speaking of details, can you talk about some of the key challenges that you faced during the restoration?
Certainly. So in every restoration, there's a lot of challenges, and I think one of our biggest challenges was finding ways in which to put the HVAC in that was not noticeable, but would still be efficient and keep people warm and work for the space. And so that was really challenging, in fact, and I really hats off to our crew on that, and our construction facility foreman was actually the one that came up with the idea of that vertical plenum in the basement. So that's why I really want to just appreciate our crew, because we really work together, and sometimes we work to find the right answer, and sometimes that involves other consultants and things like that, and working with our HVAC engineer. And we were also able to use the existing projector booth and convert that basically into a mechanical space. So that was one of our bigger challenges. And then other challenges that we have, another big challenge that we faced that we didn't really talk about too much, but there was a planter that basically went that's adjacent to that basement space, and that went down 10 feet, and that's where a great deal of water infiltration was coming through. And that actually, just to be honest, that required us to excavate twice because we didn't quite get to the bottom of it. So there was a little bit of frustration there, but we were able to get that watertight and also add some backup ways to make sure that we're getting water out of there appropriately and things like that. So that was a huge win, but not without struggle.
Did you discover anything during the restoration process that you weren't aware of before?
Oh, lots of things. You bet. We found, as per usual, we find interesting little things that get left around in the construction site. So we found a Zippo lighter and some pop cans and a can of rosin for a bow and things like that. And then one of the really fun ones, and we didn't have a chance to show this, but there's so much to share. When we took off one of the walls, we found a little drawing for how the wall went together, which was just really kind of cool for us to see. So that was really interesting, and there were a lot of other really cool discoveries, but we'll have more to share.
Great. So I think I have just one final question, which is, what's the capacity of the theater?
The capacity of the theater, it is a 100-seat theater.
Wow. Okay, great. Well, thank you both so much. As you're aware, Wright Virtual Visits exists both as an educational tool and to build general awareness around Wright's contributions to the history of architecture and design. And our hope is that many of you out there will venture out and actually visit and support publicly accessible sites like Taliesin. So our hope is that you will sign up for the newsletter and maybe be there on June 8th for the grand opening of the Hillside Theater. So thank you so much, Ryan and Elizabeth. And thank you all out there for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you next month. Our very last episode of this season, of the year, I should say, and season, is Thursday, December 7th, same time, same place, and will feature Frank Lloyd Wright's Burnham Block, which is just about 2 hours due east of Taliesin in Milwaukee. So recordings of this and all past episodes are ready to view at savewright.org/WVV. So thank you for supporting our program, and we look forward to seeing you next month.